So I am a psychologist by education, and I've been analyzing human behavior since 2010 professionally, first in an academic setting, and then later on in business. I took part in various businesses. I built analytics team from scratch, from ground up, in a few companies that you could see in the screen, well, if it worked. And then after that, I decided to go for a short detour into game design. Great year of my life, but probably won't happen again. And right now, thank you very much. I work as a consultant and as an educator, academic teacher, and co-founder at Asian Center. Asian Center currently is my top focus, where I provide people, we try to provide people with knowledge, training, skills, and tools that help you build better digital products. And we design trainings for mid-level specialists, for managers. We try to teach stuff that's fun and interesting. So let me begin with a quote that information is the oil of the 21st century. You've probably heard about it. The problem with this quote is it's wrong. Data is not oil. There is no magic furnace that can take your data and translate it into something useful. The only such engine is your mind, and data is actually more like garbage in this regard. Data takes time, data takes cost. It costs to create data, to maintain it, to store it, to transform it. The only return on investment from data is knowledge, and that's what should be focused on. So keep this in mind throughout the presentation. It will be pretty relevant. Today, we're going to focus on product analytics. Out of various branches of analytics, product analytics is the one that I specialize in. And product analytics is about how users behave in relation to a digital product and how a digital product behaves in relation to users. We will focus on analytics-driven alignment, or how to use data, how to use product analytics to make sure that your team looks and works in a shared direction. And a special place in this presentation is taken by the North Star metric. You may have heard about the North Star. For those of you who haven't, the North Star is a metric that is meant to be the single number that describes how successful your product is. It is meant to reflect the customer value for your customers of your product. So what are you doing so good that people want to pay you for it? And if you get it right, you get the perfect alignment. Everybody works towards a shared goal. Strategy is translated into a number, and the number is translated back into actions. However, if you do it not so good, you focus people in a very wrong direction, and you waste a lot of resources optimizing for something that's wrong. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to share a case study with you showing how it can go wrong, and it can go very wrong. Here's another definition. This one is by Amplitude. Again, North Star is about customer value. However, before you begin creating the North Star, creating analytics, you should have some prerequisites. One of the common mistakes that I've seen was that people were trying to replace strategy with analytics, that they understood that data-driven means that data will drive us to success. No, it won't. Analytics follows strategy. Without strategy, no amount of data, no amount of analytics is going to help you. What is a good strategy? It's definitely not, we want to grow 100% year over year, or we want to increase conversion 20% in Q3. These are financial goals. It's not a strategy. It doesn't tell you anyhow how to get to the goal. Everybody in the business wants to earn more money. The question is how you're going to do it better than your competitors. Then you should make sure everybody in the company knows the strategy, they know what part of strategy they are, and what they can do to realize the strategic goals. So once you have this intuitive understanding of what your role in the company is, what part of the team you are, then and only then is a good moment to start some serious analytics. Now, preparing for this presentation, I've prepared about 15 to 20 things that companies do, from my experience, to build this kind of alignment. I assessed them on 3 scales. Scale number 1 was alignment value. So how good this action is to actually build up the shared vision and focus people in one direction. Then, how costly it is, and how difficult it is to get it right, how much room for error there is. I call this one complexity. Complexity is different from the cost, such that cost tells you how much you'll pay for it, and complexity tells you how likely you are to get it wrong. And let me begin with the 3 things that actually are bad practices that I've seen in surprisingly many companies that slow you down, that decrease your alignment instead of increasing it. First is the data democratization. You may have heard about it. The idea here is that everybody should have access to data, everybody should use data to make their own decisions. And it sounds great on paper. Data is great, democracy is great. What can go wrong, right? Well, everything. Because data democratization is pretty costly and ineffective. I mean, think about it from the business perspective. You hire a designer to do designs, a PM to run the product and make sure the strategy is realized. You hire a developer to write code. If you ask them to do analytics, they are going to spend the time that they could have done something different, something that is their core competence, on running analytics that they are not specialized in. You're paying them money as if they were seniors, and they are below the junior level, so it doesn't make much sense. Then it ruins their focus. If you require people who are not skilled and trained as an analyst, if you require them to run analytics, you're basically wasting their time because they will be doing their tasks worse, and worst of all, they can come to conclusions that are false. So they will create the knowledge that is the opposite of good insights. They will create negative value. So basically, I hope you have a lot of money if you're trying to do this. Alignment value here is 0. So when I first approached this idea, I thought it was good. When I saw it in action in a few places, I don't think it's good anymore. Cost is pretty high, and complexity is not that big. You just go to a person and tell them, hey, from now on, you must use data to make any decision. Bad idea. Another one that it's very counterintuitive. When you manage your teams, you may want to create success metrics for every single team. It's sometimes called OKR, Objectives Key Results. You may call it internally KPIs, success metrics. Whenever you create this situation, you basically create a bunch of teams where every team has their own separate goal. And you, as a manager, have to manage a lot of teams where every goal has slightly different logic behind it, slightly different metric that they want to influence. And this creates a lot of opportunities for mistakes and a lot of opportunities for competition between teams and metric hacking. And if you want to know what metric hacking is, I would like to ask you for something. Maybe we can pull this off. If we can do this, this will be pretty fun. So metric hacking is, at this conference, speakers are rated, and then, based on the ratings, an award is given for the best speech. Now, I would like to ask you, if you don't want to rate this presentation less than 5, so if you want to earn it 4, 3, 2, 1, please don't vote. And let's see what happens at the end of today. From the outside, it will look as if my presentation was perfect, 5 out of 5. From the inside, you know what happened. Same goes on within the organizations. If you lose track of how people optimize the metric, they will do this. People will play the metric like a game. So the alignment value here is pretty low. It can be negative. It is not very costly, but it is super complex. You're building basically a whole zoo of various situations that you have to manage and you won't manage. Don't try this if you want to build for alignment. If you want to optimize for different things, this is a good idea. If you want to optimize for alignment, you're pulling your own leg. And the third thing that you have to be careful about is the dashboard library. And I mean here, dashboard library. I'm utterly surprised by how many companies think it's a good idea. The idea here is that every analysis should be completed, finished by an analytical report. And the report should be then automated as a dashboard. This is a very bad idea, because after an analyst has done an analysis, after they've produced knowledge from the garbage that data is, you ask them to add extra work to automate it. And it's pretty costly. Everybody must have access to the tools to actually to actually access the dashboards, and it creates a lot of noise that you have to navigate through. So if you're successful in your mission, you'll end up with hundreds of dashboards that nobody visits and everybody can use to prove anything or disprove anything that they like. Because the more data you have, the more things you can prove or disprove by cherry picking. And also, you create extra work for analysts. Those of you who had any contact with how development of software works, dashboards are pieces of software, and you need to maintain them. And they will go wrong in unexpected moments, and it will be difficult to maintain. So every dashboard is more maintenance for an analyst. Don't do this. Alignment value here in theory is high, but in practice, people don't know how to navigate the knowledge. So it's somewhat useless. The cost, obviously high. Complexity, not that big. It's moderately costly. So these are the 3 practices to avoid that I've come across in recent years. They seem to be fashionable, and they seem to pretty much destroy alignment when they show up. Now to the good stuff. 1, knowledge repository. Don't create repositories for dashboards. Create repositories for knowledge. Share knowledge. Make sure people know what's going on. They don't need to know what's going on behind the scenes in analytics, but they must know what was found in the analytics. So focus on spreading knowledge and insights and conclusions from your research. The tricky part that is going on here is the searchability. This is the problem that, as far as I know, hasn't been solved yet properly, and the goal here is for everybody in the company who needs to make a research, who has a research question, to be able to check if the research has already been done, if they can use something that was done in the past. If not, then they can create a new research. So focus on democratizing knowledge, and this approach will pay off because the knowledge will start to proliferate. So from one analysis, you can get actually multiple different new analyses that will broaden your knowledge. And if you do this right, you're building a really knowledge-driven organization. The alignment value here is somewhat high. I don't think it's super important for alignment, but I think it's prerequisite for everything else that I'll be talking about. Cost is not very high. You basically need a Confluence page where you put all this information. And complexity is moderate. I wouldn't say it's the most complex thing you can do with your organization. You just make sure that whenever there is an analysis that's finished, you take it, put it in a place where everybody can access it, that is searchable. That's it. Next thing that you should focus on are metrics. So there are clear, unified metrics definitions in your company. And as such, it's not very controversial, it's not very difficult, but again, I was surprised recently how many companies measure stuff, have metrics that they take decision, they base their decision on metrics, and people in the organization don't know how the metric is defined. How can you make a decision based on something that you don't understand? It doesn't make sense. So you should be able to access definitions of metrics pretty easily, and you should be able to understand what's in the metrics. So they should be documented well, and this thing is critical for analytics in general. Metrics are the heart of analytics. They are the numbers that describe user behavior and product behavior that you want to optimize, that you want to influence. So you better understand what you're influencing to do it right. It's not very critical for alignment. I think it's still pretty important. But if you're doing analytics and don't have this, do it right now. Without it, the chaos will grow, and it will become worse and worse, and you'll get to a situation where 15 people from 15 teams measure the same metric in 15 different ways. That's hell. It's not very costly, but it's very complex, because you don't only have to understand and document everything. The next thing that you need to do, and that's the most important thing, is to select the right metrics. And this is a long, slow, iterative process. Again, if you haven't thought about it, think about it, do it, and be very precise with how you choose your metrics. Now, once we have knowledge repository, we know what metrics are, let's focus on the communication. This is the part that people tend not to think about, that causes the most universal problems across all the data teams that I've seen. I think this is the most typical problems that can slow you down and that can create disalignment. Make analysts responsible for communication. I know it might be counterintuitive, However, think about it that way. An analyst takes numbers and produces knowledge out of the numbers. At the moment the knowledge is created, they are the only person in the world who are expert in this area. And if they don't give you the knowledge, you as a product manager, you as a business owner, you are unable to use this data to build a better product. So treat soft skills seriously, and the problem is if you have analysts who don't know how to communicate, you're in trouble, because people who have high technical skills in Poland tend to dislike or disregard soft skills. So the best way to prevent this problem is actually by hiring people very deliberately. And the alignment value of this is high, because analysts, when they can communicate, educate people about analytics, can actually create, they become the guardians of knowledge. If you don't understand something, don't know something, you can come to an analyst and they will put your alignment back into place. They will tell you what's the current best understanding of product and customers. The cost of it is very low. It can be negative, because if you start using your analytical skills better, you can benefit from it. And the complexity is moderate. So it's not very complex. The idea is simple. You tell your analyst to go and communicate results. It's just very difficult for some people who do analytics. And connected with it is the presentation of results. So one thing that can help you a lot with the task that I showed you before, and give you even more, is to present the result of every analysis. So if you've created an analysis, from analytical perspective, from the perspective of a specialist in analytics, what's happening is you have to focus your mind on the line of reasoning that is very clear. Writing down your analysis, creating a presentation, is like programming your mind and debugging your line of reasoning, because it has to be clear for it to be understood by other people. So for an analyst, it creates less opportunities for mistake. I have in my career corrected multiple errors in reasoning a lot of time just by running a presentation, by writing down what I think should be told. So that's a great way to learn. And then it's a great way for people in the organization to learn about the knowledge from the analyses. If done right, it can spark curiosity. And actually, once your analysts understand how important is communication, it's also not very complex, because you add one more soft skill that's well-defined. Presenting things, talking about stuff in curious, interesting way. The alignment value, again, is pretty high. The cost of it is somewhat low, because you don't need to invest too much money or resources. The only resource that you must invest is time of your employees. You must want your team to come to the presentation and spend this time on listening and learning rather than building stuff. And the complexity of this solution is very low. And once you have all this done, then is the time to think about the North Star. If you begin with the North Star without the things that I showed you, it creates, it can create problems. So be careful about it. And the North Star metric, you can think about it as the high score. As I mentioned before with the metrics are something that people look at and think how they can hack it. And when they hack it, they hack the right North Star metric, they have to hack the reality. The right North Star metric causes you to think about how you can increase something that really influences your business. And the problem is if you select it incorrectly, if you do it just because you think it's the right metric, you don't think about how valuable it is for your business, how good it is, you set the shared goal in the wrong direction. So no North Star is better than a wrong North Star. The alignment value of this is the highest. There is one simple number that everybody can understand, and everyone can think of an action to improve this metric. So this is super valuable. The cost of it is moderate, so it's not very high. You need to improve your processes a little bit, but that's basically it. So you need to make sure that everybody understands the North Star and want to influence it. And the complexity of it is super high. Getting the right North Star is like a minefield. I hope to give you a short example of it later. Now, let me take a sip of water for your and mine comfort. Okay. So what a well-defined North Star is. When we first began doing it at Based CRM, we thought that the North Star is about value, and we focused on value. The problem is, when you go with this line of reasoning, you create a situation where you can go wrong in multiple ways. So here is a short, simple instruction for you, the checklist, when you create a North Star metric to see if it works or not. 1, it should reflect value. That's what it is. But remember, it should reflect value for the customer, not for your own company. So think about what you do so well that people want to pay you for it, and try to put it into a number. It should be simple. Everybody should be able to understand it as soon as they see the metric. It should be actionable. This is something that is, I think, the least obvious of the 4. When you look at the metric, no matter where you are in the organization, you should be able to influence the metric. And it should be infinite. It shouldn't be a goal. It should be an ambition that you choose to focus on. Now, what are bad North Stars? I think the picture gives you an idea. And there are many North Stars like that. Again, I mean, it makes no sense. Because see, if we think about the North Star, like I told you, when you focus on money, when you focus on profit, on gross margin, on gross revenue, if you can influence it, if you can take actions as a single worker contributor to improve this North Star, you can as well go and start your own business. Also, it doesn't reflect any value for the customer, because we want to earn money as a company. Everybody wants to. That's the bloodstream of business. So that's not the best one. Now, the one that I think is somewhat controversial is gross merchandise value at Amazon. It's not bad, but it's not good. So let's take the 4 criteria and see how it goes. I'll leave the value part for the end. So first, is it infinite? Yeah, it is pretty much practically infinite. Is it simple? Yeah, it's the sum total value of all goods that were sold on Amazon. Very simple. Is it actionable? I don't know. I'm not sure. When you look at gross merchandise value at the scale of Amazon, you look at the large market processes. So you're measuring how well market is doing, not how well your company is doing. So that's controversial. And the worst part is value. At Amazon, you have salespeople, people who want to sell stuff in the platform, and you have users who want to buy stuff in their platform. And there is no value in gross merchandise value for people who come to Amazon to buy things. That's a bad thing, and I think that's what makes it not so great. Given how focused is Amazon on money, this makes sense. Only it's not the best North Star from the customer perspective. Then we have Facebook. And Facebook made a pretty good North Star. This North Star was formulated by Mark Zuckerberg, and it's MAU, monthly active users. It was later iterated into DAU, daily active users. So does it reflect value? Yeah, I go to Facebook to interact with people. So my goal is to, spend their time there and do this. Without people, I cannot interact with people. It reflects my value. Is it actionable? Yeah, it is actionable. As a developer, as a designer, as a PM, I can think of actions that increase MAU or that prevent it from decreasing. Then, is it simple? It's very simple. Is it infinite? Yes. I mean, it is, and there are 5 billion internet users, but come on. So, Netflix, another thing. I love this North Star with all my heart. It's unethical, but as a North Star, it's really good. So you may remember the CEO of Netflix a few years back speaking about how they compete with human sleep. And this is perfectly reflected in this metric. So when you frame your strategy as such as that, so our strategy is to get people to watch as much content as possible, you get out of your box of, oh, we're a streaming platform, we're competing with HBO and Disney, and get out there in the world and think about how you can influence a human being that's in front of the computer. And you want to influence them by increasing the amount of time they spend watching your content. And then that's the way how you can get, through a logical reasoning, to a place where you state publicly that your #1 enemy is people sleeping. That's Netflix. So it's brilliant in terms of business thinking. Not very ethical. I don't like this line of reasoning. But as a North Star, that's how you should roll. Now, is it simple? Extremely simple. You look at it and you know what it is about. I don't need to explain it. You already understand it. Is it actionable? Yeah. everybody in the company can do something. They can draw in more people. They can suggest better stuff to people who are already there. They can prevent the platform from crashing. So all actions by everybody in the company can increase this metric. Is it infinite? Yeah. And same for Zoom, meeting minutes, same logic. It is reflecting business value, it is very actionable, it is very simple, and it's basically infinite. So when you create a North Star, think about the value, but the value of your customer. The critical part here is to think what you're doing so well that people want to pay you for it. And now to the case study. I once worked at Base CRM. Those of you who are from Krakow may have heard about it. Those of you who are from outside Krakow probably haven't heard about it. We were the first Polish startup who earned over $50 million in VC venture capital investment, and one of the first one to exit for over $100 million. It was a wonderful learning experience working there. We were software that was meant to track sales processes, so we were designed to help sales reps, sales representatives do better work. And we thought of ourselves as a direct competition of Salesforce. We had huge data-driven ambitions. Basically, that was our selling point to investors and to employees. We are the data-driven company. Data is everywhere. We feed everybody with data, and we expect you to use data to take every decision inside your company. From the inside, it was year 2017, 2018. It made a lot of sense to think about it this way, because we thought it would create alignment. But the problem with this approach was that if you ask everybody to do their own research, everybody will draw their own conclusions. So you create disalignment. You create constant discussions and debates about who's right or wrong about the interpretations of the stuff that most people don't understand, because they don't understand mathematical mechanisms, statistical mechanisms used to transform the data. So most of these discussions were useless and weren't necessary. We wasted a lot of time and resources on building something that slowed us down, and we thought it was good. It did draw in a lot of venture capital, okay. And then we wanted to use this to keep teams aligned, monitor their performance, and data was easily available to everyone. And the ease of availability was good, and what this did right is because we hired for this, we hired people who wanted to do analytics, and we put analytics and data in the central place. So we were able to build a highly data-driven, analytics-driven culture, and it worked very well. Now, when I was hired there, I was finally hired because the C-level decided that analytics is difficult. We need a separate role for it, right? So that's when it happened. They decided to hire a professional analyst. One of the first things that I did was clean up the metric definition process. So how metrics should be defined at Base. And we began the process not with a metric. This is very often something where every analysis begins, right? Give me a metric, calculate total value of something, calculate MAU. No, we began, and that's where you should always begin, with the business problem, so that you understand what you're solving for, and that you can decide whether analytics is even the right method to solve the problem. Then we generated idea for metrics, and that's a very important part for alignment. We did it always together with business. So with a PM, with a designer, with a CPO, whoever is interested in the analysis. And this creates this personal relation, personal bond with a metric. Whenever you have a decision maker who creates a metric themselves, they, one, understand it better, and two, they can use the results better once the results are out. And then, because of the personal bond, they will be curious about the results and they will want to see the analysis. So that's a very nice idea to create alignment. Then we validated the metric and selected the final list of metrics. We validated it based on historical data. We could do it because we collected all the data in the world. You shouldn't do it. You should validate your metrics differently. You can validate your metrics without measuring a single thing, but that's a story for another conference. And, sorry, the slide seems to have been duplicated. Now, reporting knowledge. Another part that we created, that we tried to build alignment around, was the reports, the knowledge databases. The metrics processes worked wonders for alignment. People liked it, analysts liked it, so that's something that you may want to implement in your own company. About reporting knowledge, it went well, but not that well. The first thing that I think we've done well, and it's pretty logical when you think about it, that's why I'm so surprised at so many dashboards everywhere, was to use multiple levels of reporting. So whenever we made a research and analysis, we asked ourselves, what's the cheapest form of reporting that we can use to convey all the information effectively? The first idea was a Slack message. If it could be sent on Slack, send it on Slack. The second was email. If it could be done on email, send an email. Then a short analysis report, a long analysis report that is presented to the company. And finally, if all of these things are not sufficient, if we think that this analysis is so important that many people will have to watch it and look at it throughout longer period of time, then and only then we created dashboards. So we had clear and easily available documentation, we did the open presentations, and the result was that our knowledge was shared, people knew about it, people gave their own ideas about the research and came to us with various research questions, and then our knowledge grew. So think about it, remember about it, when you popularize analytics, it's not about data. That's the most costly mistake you can make. It's about knowledge. And then the last area where we tried to work, and unfortunately, my perspective now is that we failed. This might have been an impossible task, was to popularize analytics at base. So the idea was that everybody uses data to make their own decisions. But why would a developer or a QA specialist use data to make a decision? They have other sources, much better, to make their own decisions about the next thing that they should do. Yet, we tried to do this. It didn't work. I tried to do this in multiple companies, and the result was the same. It just didn't work. So my conclusion for now is that it might not be working, but we tried. And here is what we did. One, we made company-wide presentations of metrics monthly, obviously with a North Star. We made every metric have an owner, and this is different from giving every team a success metric. Because whenever a metric was created, we thought the other way around. Which team can take care of it? Which team or teams can influence it most? If there was no such team, the metric was probably not the right one to measure. Why waste your time and attention on stuff you cannot influence, right? So the metrics had owners. There were people responsible for improving the metrics. Analytics, archive, and dashboard were easily accessible. We ran a fortnightly newsletter. This was very motivating and very stressing for us as analysts. The idea here was that every 2 weeks, we had to send something interesting that we found inside data. So we sent about 20 iterations of this. So we had to create 20 interesting insights for all of the company for a year. It was very motivating for us. Don't do it to your analytics team. Set them like goal once a month. That would be enough. But if you can deliver, then it shows that analytics is functioning well. We were best buddies with CPO, with PMs, and we decided to try and maintain at least one analytics task per sprint per team, so that every team remembers that analytics exists, and whether there is a real need, urgent need, to use analytics, they come to us and they do it. And the result was that analytics was used in an optimal way, but we spent a lot of resources trying to achieve it, and in hindsight, I don't think it was the right goal. If I were to do it today, I would say, don't popularize it among everyone, but make sure that your decision makers know that there is analytics, know how to use analytics, and target decision makers much more deliberately. Forget about people who don't make product decisions. Make sure they're in the loop, make sure they understand the knowledge, they can give you their own ideas, because developers, for example, are really good at finding out logical mistakes in your reasoning. This is very valuable in analytics, but they don't need to take their decisions based on data. PMs, CPOs, UX specialists, these are the people who you should focus on. And in this place, in this system, we decided to create a North Star. The process for creation, briefly speaking, was such as the CEO came to us and decided to do the North Star, because everybody in the Valley has a North Star. We must have the North Star too. I mean, the Silicon Valley, right? It was very fashionable at the time. It was 2018 or 19. And he selected WeDapu. And he told us his idea. We discussed it for a few meetings, and his idea won. Surprise. Now, if you don't understand what this North Star is, that's fine. That's fine. I had to discuss it with many people in the company, multiple times with the same person. When you Google for WeDapu, that's the only image you get that's on Creative Commons license. This metric is super obscure. It takes a lot of time to understand it, and even more time to think about actions that you can do with it. The idea behind WeDapu seems logical. There is a certain amount of licenses when you work in software as a service business. People buy licenses, and they have access to something they pay for, to our base CRM software. Our goal was to make sure they use it as a part of their daily routine. They open up Base and they use it to sell. So that was our idea. And WeDapu tells us what percentage of users who could access Base did it on any given day. So for example, WeDapu of 50% meant that 50% of people who are paying for us used us on that day. And it was really difficult to understand. I had to translate this multiple times to the same people in the company over and over again. And when you run the checklist that I presented you, I created this checklist after this situation. You will see that this is not a good North Star. It doesn't reflect value. People don't pay us to use their software. If our software, if Base CRM could do the job for them, they would be so happy if they didn't have to turn it on at all. So it doesn't reflect customer value. It reflected our value, not customers. So that was pretty egocentric. Is it simple? Not at all. Is it actionable? I don't know how about you, but I couldn't think about actions to increase it. Why? Because it measures habit. WeDapu tells us about habit of how people use software to help them in the sales processes. And habits are extremely difficult to change. We thought, basically, when you reframe it, we thought that by building a better product interface, we can change people's habit and how they interact with software, how they do their job. So it's not good. You don't do it this way. And therefore, we were unable to deliver any meaningful results. As a growth team, what we did was we built a team of 3 or 4 great specialists in the company, and we were handpicked, right? I was a part of it then. I switched with another analyst to focus on other stuff. The time in the company was such that we knew we only had a year before deciding about exit. And we spent this year on a dozen of projects optimizing something that was impossible to optimize because we made this decision to treat this as our North Star. Maybe, just maybe, if we selected the right North Star, things could have gone differently. Maybe there would be no exit because we would optimize for something that would be better aligned with customer value. And I suggested one such metric, and Chief Product Officer, I think he was with me, but CEO won ultimately. It was pretty obvious. Total amount of deals won. So how many won deals? How many deals were closed using our software? That's the value for a sales rep. They want to win deals. They want to close deals. Why select something that describes their habit if you can select something that shows how much money they earn, how much stuff they won? That's the metric that you want to optimize for. Alas, this didn't happen, and in 2020, Base CRM ceased to exist. Now, what worked well in this story? We were able to democratize a lot of knowledge. We were able to create true, real analytics-driven culture. We did analytics that was so advanced that once when a VP of Salesforce came to us because we were able to hire him, he told us that we're doing analytics that is more advanced than at Salesforce. We created high engagement, but unfortunately, we did a few things wrong, and the things were, we did it with way too high costs. We could have achieved the same result, I'm not exaggerating, 3 to 5 times cheaper. The expectations from analytics were unrealistic. Basically, half of the time, the C-level wanted to use analytics to fix holes in their strategic thinking and reasoning. And the final sin of every startup, and we fell because of it, in my personal opinion, was the hubris, the pride. We were so certain that we're doing the right stuff and optimizing for the right stuff that we didn't stop and think, what if we're wrong? And what if we're wrong? Well, goodbye Base. And that's what happened. Thank you so much, and that's all from the presentation.
Thank you, Michał. We are running out of time, so we have time for one, maybe two questions. So, anyone? So let me see the application. We already have them, so... No, sorry, it is my question. Sorry.
No questions?
No, but I have.
Oh, great.
You said that the metrics must be understandable and easy to get for people you work with. So do you have any kind of framework? How do you really make them easy for people? And how do you measure it, that it is really easy for people?
I have at least two frameworks. And I mean, I'm sorry, because it seems this question is staged, but I actually teach about it. There is a quick 4-hour training where I teach about my approach. So, sorry, guys.
Okay, sorry.
And basically, it is what I told you, but a bit more detailed. So you begin with a research question and hypothesis, and you make sure that it serves a good goal. Once you align the goal and the question, you then ask yourself a question, okay, what do I mean by each of the words in the question? This is to create better alignment, to make sure you understand the question and everybody understands it. A common shared misunderstanding is that when you ask a question, when you tell a sentence, you think that you understand each other. This is not the case. When you start analyzing it word by word, you'll find out that most people understand these words slightly differently. So you want to align them. Then you create metrics based on this understanding, and you can then check if these metrics have a chance for working by asking 4 questions. Is it actionable? Is it interpretable? Do I understand what high-low value means? And can I implement it technically and legally speaking? And then you create the final list of metrics. That's a very, very short answer. But yeah, there is a framework for that. I'm working on it. So if you're interested, feel free to ask questions.
Thank you very much. It was very insightful. I love the term, the North Star, and I will read about it more because it's very interesting. Thank you for your flow and wonderful presentation. And for you, I welcome you. I want to introduce you for a break, but let's give a shout out to Michał.
Thank you very much.